You bury your grandmother in a wooden box lined with silk. You place flowers on top. You say a few words, then you go home and don't talk about it again. It feels ancient. It isn't. For most of human history, death didn't look calm. It didn't look private. It didn't even look final. Your ancestors didn't bury their dead to say goodbye. They buried them to keep them close. So what did early humans actually do when someone died? The real answer is stranger than you think. Around 100,000 years ago, at a site called Qafzeh in Israel, archaeologists found a skeleton curled on its side with deer antlers placed carefully across its chest. Not tossed in, positioned. Someone knelt beside this body and decided how it should look forever. At Sungir in Russia, roughly 34,000 years ago, 2 children were buried head to head, covered in thousands of hand-carved ivory beads. Each bead took hours to make. Why would a struggling hunter-gatherer community spend that much labor on the dead? Here's the plain English answer. Death wasn't an ending to your ancestors. It was a transition. The person hadn't disappeared. They had changed form, and they still needed things. Tools, ornaments, company. That's why ancient graves are full of belongings, and why red ochre pigment was sprinkled onto bodies like a final, deliberate act. Some researchers believe it symbolized blood and rebirth. Others think it simply marked the body as sacred. Either way, someone chose to do it. But not everyone stayed buried. At several Neolithic sites, archaeologists have found skulls removed from bodies, cleaned, painted, and kept inside homes, watching over daily life. Anthropologist Ian Kite argues this wasn't vague ancestor worship. It was social memory. The dead stayed part of the community because their faces literally stayed in the room. Your ancestors didn't see death as a wall. They saw it as a door left slightly open, and the doorway went both ways. In many hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists, the dead weren't just remembered, they were consulted. Elders would speak to a skull, ask it questions, sometimes even blame it when the hunt went badly. The line between the living and the dead wasn't sharp. It was blurry, porous, negotiable. Why does this matter to your brain today? Because the instinct never disappeared. It just changed shape. Psychologist Ernest Becker argued that civilization itself, art, religion, legacy, functions as an immortality project. You don't raise children or build something lasting for purely practical reasons. Some part of you is still trying to be buried with antlers on its chest, still trying to stay in the room. There's evidence for this too. Psychologists Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pyszczynski developed terror management theory. Their experiments found that reminding people of their own mortality made them cling more tightly to their beliefs and identities. Death doesn't just scare you. It reorganizes what you value. This is also why grief so often comes with an urge to build something. A garden planted in someone's memory. A scholarship carrying their name. A tattoo you'll wear for the rest of your life. You aren't just remembering. You're constructing a small, stubborn monument against the idea that a person can simply stop existing. The instinct goes back even further than formal graves. Paleoanthropologist Berger's work at the Rising Star Cave System suggested that Homo naledi, a small-brained hominin, may have deliberately placed bodies deep inside a nearly inaccessible chamber. If true, honoring the dead isn't a byproduct of human intelligence. It might be close to the root of it. Even the objects buried alongside bodies tell you something about this. Spear points meant for hunting in an afterlife. Painted shells meant to decorate a body no one would ever see again. None of it made practical sense. All of it made emotional sense. Here's the twist. None of this, the ochre, the beads, the skulls kept in homes, was really for the dead. The dead don't see the beads or feel the antlers. Every ritual was for the living, who needed somewhere to put an unbearable feeling. That's exactly what you're doing today. Scrolling old photos, keeping a jacket that still smells like someone, talking to a grave as if it can hear you. You're not being irrational. You're performing a ritual 100,000 years old. You bury your grandmother in a wooden box lined with silk. You place flowers on top. It feels quiet. It feels modern. But underneath the silk is the same ancient hand, still refusing to let go.